Welcome everyone back to another episode of Fundraising Today. We've been on a little bit of a hiatus. There's been some changes happening and a lot happening in the industry with lots of conferences and events, but we are excited to be back. And today I am joined by two colleagues who I love having conversations with, and we are having a discussion about AI. It's a big topic, but before we give some definitions and qualifications around this topic of artificial intelligence, I'd love to introduce today's guests. So first, I am joined by Don Galasso. And Don, yeah, welcome back. Would you mind introducing if it's some of our viewers' first time, kind of who you are and what you do at GivingDNA and Pursuant?
Yeah, thanks, Leah. It's great to be here. I'm the VP of Technology at GivingDNA. I have about a decade of experience in data analytics, worked for many different data vendors, and I've been at GivingDNA for coming up on 2 years. I typically share the spotlight with you on our LinkedIn Lives.
Yes, glad to have you back. And then our guest that we're really excited about today, because we've been itching to get him on our in some of our various podcasts and blogs, is our Chief Product Developer at GivingDNA, David Stanton.
Thanks, Leah. As Leah mentioned, I'm Dave Stanton, and I head up product at Pursuant and specifically focused on GivingDNA, and have been actually kind of working on the GivingDNA product since about 2017, but with Pursuant since 2019 when the little startup I was at came over in an acquisition, and excited to be here.
Glad to have you. So, Dave, I really appreciate your background in the technology space because you've spent, a number of years trying to create technology solutions to essentially make it easier for fundraisers to do their jobs, right? That we can all get behind that. And so I wanted to bring you and Don on to talk about artificial intelligence because it's a big topic. It's a very broad topic, and I don't imagine in a 10 to 15 minute LinkedIn Live we can cover all of our bases, but we wanted to cover a few of the things that have been in the news lately, and I think answer some questions or at least attempt to answer some questions that fundraisers and nonprofit leaders are asking right now about how is AI relevant to the job that I'm currently doing? Does it threaten any jobs in the future? Where can it create some efficiencies, save some time? And what are some precautions to keep in mind? So where I would love to kind of start, and I'd love for you to jump in and address this, Dave. So when we talk about AI, there are many different forms of AI that we've probably been interacting with for years now, but it's been kind of behind the scenes. So what is it about some of these new forms of artificial intelligence that just has everybody scratching their heads, and we just can't seem to stop talking about it?
It's a great question. I think the first part is that to step back or start at the beginning, at a very high level, AI is essentially using machines to replicate cognitive function for humans, like human intelligence, but in an artificial sense. Which sounds obvious and everybody knows, but I think that a lot of times people start multiple steps down the rabbit hole. And so that's kind of like a good level set. And so there's been lots of, AI development work has been around actually for decades. And there's been a lot of advancements. And I think that the biggest difference is that a lot of the things that people had seen before were behind the scenes in different technology products that they were using, everything from shopping on Amazon to driving their car to any other kind of like business B2B products that they're leveraging at their company or nonprofit, but it didn't feel like AI, even though that might have been something that was kind of underlying. And so I think that's probably why it's been around for a while, but not as much top of mind. It's just like, it's Amazon recommended a great product that I wanted to be used, or this is nice. My Gmail, can finish my sentence pretty accurately. Things of that nature. But now I think why it's definitely become more top of mind for many people is that with this rapid revolution in these large language models and things like Chat GPT, and others, everybody is making one now. It's much more of a well, it's not just a consumer product, it's a business product as well, and we'll probably talk a little bit about that. But it's much more in your face, something that everyone can access, and something that is definitely kind of like a magical moment with what it can do. And so I think that's definitely leading a lot of the public kind of awareness.
I think it just seems like it's been like this snowball that all of a sudden turned into this huge thing overnight. But to your point, Dave, we've been interacting with AI for a long time. And so it's actually changed, I think, the way people expect the different things that they use to interact with them. And I think for the nonprofit space, why that's important is because when our expectations in our real world is changing, our donors live in the real world, right? And so if our donors are used to going onto Amazon or saying, hey, Alexa, I need this, and Alexa all of a sudden, next month says, do you need more of this thing that you've been buying on a regular basis? How does Alexa know that? Or how does Amazon know the things that I want, which I have a very different experience on Amazon than you do, and knows in a timely fashion? And so we're having to, Dave, we laughed earlier. I saw a meme today on Instagram or something that's basically was like, I don't even create a shopping list anymore. I just yell into my living room all the different things I need to shop, and all of a sudden it shows up at my front door, right? Like that's how crazy it is. But we're being conditioned to this. And so, it's my product getting to me the type of product that I want when I want it. And so when we think about our nonprofits, our donors are having that same expectation with us from a nonprofit perspective. Are we telling them the right thing that they want to hear at the right time, all the time? And so the only way that we're going to be able to accomplish that from a nonprofit space is by accepting artificial intelligence, understanding at least enough about it to know what technology can help, and then using that technology to help with those easy things to do, not those really complex things, but those easy things like finishing my email on Google because it kind of knows what the rest of my sentence is going to look like.
Yeah, for sure. And I think not to jump ahead to some potential questions from Leah, but I think it's a really good point what you brought up, that it's part of the donor experience within their just daily lives. And there's been a lot of different comparisons of what kind of technological revolution this is. And I don't know, and there's pretty good arguments for a lot of them, but I think two good ones that I like are mobile and even farther back, just like when JavaScript got introduced. And the reason I share those is that before you just had like these static, 20, 30 years ago, like kind of essentially like these like basic static websites. And then now there was essentially this new language where you could make more interactive experiences. So the thing was, if your website was just this like essentially looking like a Word document, then you were falling behind no matter what your product or service was, because there was just this whole new way to essentially interact online. And same thing where now like there's so many companies, it's been true for a long time, where if you don't have like a mobile first approach and an app, then you're going to fall way behind. And so I think that this has a lot of similar connotations where AI is I can't think of the right word, but essentially like kind of going throughout everything that we do and everything that our donors do. And so that it's really important to be able to learn and embrace the technology and leverage it in the best way possible for your organization, because it's going to be an expected way to interact with all different types of technology.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah, there's so many things we could discuss when it comes to AI, and I think the one that would be probably best to focus on is the time-saving aspect, which is also kind of the aspect of it that is also frightening to a lot of folks. Is it going to make some jobs irrelevant, even though it's going to save, at the end of the day, a lot of it could potentially save a lot of time and help you find some efficiencies. But specifically when it comes to different practices within fundraising, what are some applications of AI, Dave, that you are like currently seeing being rolled out to the nonprofit space? And then what are some applications that you see could happen down the road?
Yeah. So I think there's a handful of applications that have been around for a little while that people probably were, or they may or may not have been aware of, depending also on the company they're using and how the marketing material looked, but existed already. Things like, there's different modeling for segmentation for sending out appeals, finding lookalike models and then going to third-party vendor to purchase a list. And then even underlying AI within some of the commercial marketing, distribution tools that they were using to help them, kind of like write those appeals or, set up those different landing pages, what have you. So I think that there's been a kind of low level of some behind the scenes AI and different kind of sub groups underneath that, like machine learning and so forth, that have been fueling that. And so that has existed for a little while and will continue forward. And then I think one of the big ones that's really interesting is obviously with these things like Chat GPT, where there's a huge plethora of potential things that people can do, and we're just scratching the surface. And I think that we could have this conversation like next week, and there'd be 10 more things, and next month 100 more, and next year 1,000 more. So it's just growing exponentially. But some of the specific ones are, I think it can really do a lot to turbocharge the client strategists that are working on behalf of these organizations, the fundraisers at these organizations, to help them to put together better and quicker appeals, putting together imagery like for that you would go out in these appeals, whether it's an email or physical letter, and like being able to essentially do a lot of the busy work, but a lot faster. You can even, you got to be careful, obviously, on sharing sensitive data, but it can help to reformat like spreadsheets and things of that nature. And so I think that one of the big things that's really interesting and straightforward right now is that it can really make it so that the fundraisers can focus on kind of like the harder problems and reduce a lot of that busy work where they might be spending hours just like typing out something standard that a Chat GPT or somebody similar could put together very quickly, and then they kind of edit and tweak based on whatever they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, another example, Dave, along those same lines is even things like when I talk to nonprofits all the time, and even things like, okay, I would need to look at my donors who are upgrading, downgrading, or staying the same year over year. How do most of them accomplish it right now? They're using pivot tables on an annual basis and literally like cutting and pasting data in a very, very time-consuming process, where there's technology out there that can do that same time, like literally same time. Or who are my lapsing donors? Do I get that out from a pivot table? Does my CRM tell me that? How can I get it? And so just the simple things like that are things that are already available that a lot of nonprofits might not even realize is out in the marketplace already. Like, why are you still using pivot tables and spending 3 or 4 days to find my upgrades and my downgrades year over year or month over month, right? Technology can do that for me. So yes, it's going to save me time, but I very rarely talk to a nonprofit, a person that's working in a nonprofit that says they can't use some of their time better, right? So it's instead of it being a fearful experience, which I think people see something like Chat GPT, which is a very sophisticated AI, at least in my opinion, and is it going to replace me as a copywriter? That's a very different conversation than using some technology that's out there. And heck, even if it's going to replace some of what you do as a copywriter, I guarantee you can replace that with other stuff in your job that you currently are getting to because you're spending all your time doing copywriting or pivot tables.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think I know. Have you guys seen the new Photoshop update where you can kind of like extend like a picture and type in what you want? Do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah.
Yes, and you can also go in and, for example, ask it to edit elements of a picture. So I watched someone do this where they wanted to make a child from like a developing country in a picture look slightly less sad for an appeal and just make him look a little happier. I've seen some of the applications like that.
Yeah, so you're exactly right, and like it just being able to essentially kind of type in essentially in your simple English query or whatever your language, they probably take multiple languages to then get that output rather than spending hours tweaking it is really powerful. And so there's obviously a direct correlation with putting together an image for certain like appeals or websites, what have you. But I think that also there's going to be lots of opportunities to what you were talking about, Dawn, of being able to ask those simple questions and having an AI run that really complex analysis of people that are likely to upgrade in the key multi-year life cycle, but they went to my gala last week, those really complex questions that might take a while for you to do in your current systems, you can just ask really quickly. And then not only does that empower you to be able to work on, fundraising with them much faster than spending a bunch of time waiting for that data to return either from your data analytics team or doing it yourself. But then also now I think that there's another level where maybe you only have enough time to do one of those analysis and you got to like think, okay, I think this is the right question to ask. Whereas now you can ask 100 questions, it gets done in a minute, and then you can kind of comb through that. And you're like, oh, actually, there's a different subgroup that I should be focusing on, or there's a different opportunity, but I just didn't, the appeal was due at the end of the week. I only had enough time to run one or two of these types of queries and then analyze that data to try to make a decision. So I think it also empowers you to access more information to make some of those better decisions.
Yeah, you have to do less assuming, because we all know what assuming means, right? And so do less of that and a more data-driven strategy by looking at, and then even things like looking at what's performing and what's not performing in a way that you might not be able to currently, right? Like is this, okay, I think this campaign performed, but I can't get the data out to really see whether it performed or not, or did it make money or lose money? I'm not 100% sure. So being able to use the right tools to help you with that can be critical in making sure that you're making the right pivoting from a strategic standpoint in any given time during the year as well.
Yeah, and also there's a lot of interesting stuff that I've only started to just play around with myself, but kind of treating like a Chat GPT or similar in a recursive nature, where you kind of like, you can ask it, how to ask better questions, right? Or what do you think I did well or wrong with this, like certain, it's like, hey, I wrote this like, essay or whatever. And you essentially use it to get like consistent feedback and throughout the conversation that you're having with it. So there's also going to be definitely opportunities for, okay, here are my, you can see my results from this campaign. What would you have done better? What did I do wrong? Even though maybe you hit your goals, you thought it was successful. It's like, oh, actually, there was a word in your copy that's shown recently doesn't resonate as well because for whatever reason, or, I don't know what the answers would be, right? But I think there's definitely going to be lots of ways that it can be almost like, a partner or like an additional team member that you can be kind of bouncing ideas off of and improving with.
Yeah, I love that. And I think with Chat GPT in particular, everyone's like, oh, it's going to take copywriters' jobs. But I know I use it a lot, but I don't use it for my writing because I like my voice when I write. And so but when I do throw it in there to just, I feel like I'm too wordy, can you take my voice and just edit it to fewer words? Or can you take my copy and give me a cool subject line for it so that it gets more opens when I send it out? And so I'm using it to enhance what I'm doing rather than replace what I'm doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's going to be the case for many people as well.
There's so much more on this topic that I feel like we could talk about, that we could probably do a whole nother episode about. But I think we're going to need a wrap there for today. So Dave and Dawn, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. And I can't wait to sit down and talk about it once we have, 5 more additional huge questions to address on this topic.